Canada is one of the richest nations in the world. The aisles of our supermarkets are lined with food from around the globe. Ensuring a supply of food for ourselves and our families is relatively easy and affordable, while many of us don't need to think of where we will get our next meal from. When we think of the word hunger, we often think of faraway places like Africa and India, where images of hunger have infiltrated our collective consciousness through our TV screens. But even in Canada, hunger is an issue for many individuals and families. It is hard to gauge how many people in Canada are actually affected by hunger, but the use of and proliferation of food banks are good barometers to the extensiveness of hunger in this country. Presently, there are 673 food banks in Canada, and in March of 2007, 720,231 people used these food banks. Sadly, almost 39% of the people who use food banks are children. How does the issue of hunger affect people living in Kelowna? In 2006, the Kelowna Food Bank helped feed 28,166 people, 33% of whom were children. In Kelowna, as well as British Columbia and the rest of Canada, poverty is the root cause of hunger. BC suffers from the largest number of low-income families as well as the highest rate of child poverty in Canada. It has been over 18 years since the federal government promised to eliminate child poverty, and since that time the number of impoverished children has grown by almost 130,000 people. The rise of food banks and an increase in those suffering from hunger in Canada raise significant questions about the current administration of welfare reform and social policy. Any discussion of hunger must also be accompanied by a discussion of the term food security. Food security exists when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. Food security is important to all of us because as we become disconnected and distanced from our food, we put our health and well-being into the hands of faceless corporations whose only goal is the accumulation of wealth and the creation of profit. Food insecurity, on the other hand, occurs when individuals do not have access to safe, sufficient, and nutritious food. Household food insecurity is fundamentally a problem of financial insecurity. Government agendas to slash spending for social programs and welfare payments provide large challenges for those that are food insecure and at risk of hunger. While we were previously optimistic over worldwide economic growth having a desirable impact in Canada, at the same time we witnessed the increase of poverty in the country and a widening gap between the richest and poorest Canadians. One can only imagine what will happen now as the world's economy takes a giant dive and more people lose their jobs. What can we do about food insecurity? Short-term relief solutions such as food banks are the first obvious answer. However, even with the important services that food banks provide, they are only band-aids to the greater problem of food insecurity. In fact, many people think that hunger and food insecurity are not issues in Canada and point to food banks as evidence that people are being fed. Yet the sudden appearance of food banks in Canada over the last 30 years is a significant indication of the extensiveness of food insecurity and poverty, and implicates the inadequacy of the welfare state and the social safety net. Other responses to food insecurity are community and individual capacity building measures. These include initiatives such as community kitchens, community gardens, and food buying clubs. The third and most powerful stage of addressing food insecurity is working towards system change. System change involves actions which address problems that lie at the heart of food insecurity. Food problems are political issues and are connected to the dilemmas of health, poverty, the environment, nutrition, and social justice. The problems of food insecurity and hunger are often framed as predicaments that can be addressed by merely giving food. However, this neutralizes the issue from politics and validates food insecurity as a charitable interest rather than one of social justice. Canada has endorsed numerous declarations and conventions which clearly recognize the right to adequate food and the international right of everyone to be free from hunger. If this is true, why haven't the federal and provincial governments taken the necessary steps to ensure all Canadians are food secure? The increasing corporatization of the food industry also needs to be implicated as a significant factor in the proliferation of food insecurity. There are profound links between farmers that are losing their land in North and South America, increased dependence on imported food, and the reality that large numbers of people are unable to put food in their cupboards. To increase food security, we need to change the way we think about food and its commodification. Food is a human right and should not be used as an economic tool by corporations to accumulate wealth at the expense of poor and marginalized people. We need to pressure government to create policies that work for the social good instead of corporate greed and further the separation between the rich and poor of this country. Nature and society also need to be re-embedded in broader discussions about the direction we want new policies to take. How can we do this? Get involved in food groups in your area, write letters to newspapers and politicians, and most of all, spread the word about the issues of hunger and food insecurity in Canada.